right, thank you. So indeed, the last presentation, I hope you can keep for 10 minutes your attention because we will talk about sustainability. I think most of you follow everything about the European Green Deal, where Europe tries to become the world's first climate neutral continent by 2050. Recently in July, they also launched their Fit for 55 package. So these are things that we at least follow closely. I think the focus is a lot on climate change, whereas I think we also should focus on many other sustainability impacts, just saying a few like resource scarcity, water, land use. So that's something that we are also working on and which I think is important that we all keep an eye on. So many different methodologies exist for sustainability assessment. I think you all heard of LCA, LCC, TEA, or even for the social impact, the SLCA and the combination, which is called life cycle sustainability assessments. Although these methodologies, they exist, they are used a lot. For some, they're even ISO standards, but still there are some challenges. The first challenge is that they are often done in a separate assessment, so they are not combined, which leads to different system boundaries. Also the assumptions, so the values that are used to make the calculations, they are often not in line with each other. Also, there is still some room for methodological choices, and that makes comparison of the results of sustainability assessments hard. Even for people working on sustainability assessments, it's often very hard to compare results. And having them separately also like really comparing like from an environmental versus an economic perspective, what is now interesting. Also looking at the figure, you see, I will try to have my pointer, you see that the inherent perspective of, for example, a techno-economic assessment versus typical life cycle costing or life cycle assessment is different. This also has to do with the goal of these assessments. Today, I would like to talk about sustainability assessment for emerging technologies. And then it's already important to see that some of these methodologies rather have an exposed perspective. So they really look at the sustainability impact when a process is at higher TRL level, whereas others have more an ex-ante approach and they start from low TRL levels. And it's the last ones where I would like to talk about, and that's typically, for example, techno-economic assessments, or if it's life cycle assessment, then we talk about streamlined or perspective LCAs. So going further on these sustainability assessments for emerging technologies, often you hear like, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty, which is the case. We still have to prove a lot of things, but this uncertainty does not need to be a problem. It's more like you need to know that this uncertainty exists. And here the trumpet of accuracy gives a nice visualization of the accuracy that you typically encounter depending on the TRL levels. And you see, even if you go really to high TRL levels, there is still some uncertainty. But despite the fact that you have this, it is important that you do the assessments early. 70 to 80% of your production costs will be determined at low TRL. So if you don't start to make an assessment then you lose a vision of like what are the main cost factors. So it is important to already start early and just embrace the fact that there is uncertainty and make sure that you take that into account in your assessments. Also, another big difference between doing a sustainability assessment at high TRL level versus at low TRL level is a specific goal. So if we do a sustainability assessment, our goal is not to say like this is the sustainability impact of the process, but we rather want to guide technologies development together with the tech developers, really defining a roadmap for this further development and setting clear research targets. So that's what we envision. And you also see that more and more experts also see the need for such guidance at low TRL level, and the fact that there are still a lot of flexibility in the methodologies, and so they start to develop guidelines to make them more harmonized. I think the researchers working on CCU, they might have already heard about the initiative of the Global CO2 Initiative. They are working on really guidelines for TEA and LCA for CO2 utilization. And at the moment, one of the things that they are working on is also the integration of both. Another thing that you might have seen is that for specifically for the Moonshot projects, VLIO has launched a public tender where they say, okay, we really want to have a harmonized framework for sustainability evaluations so that we are able to compare the different assessments that are done, and so that we can have some clear conclusions from it. And so you really see that there is a need for an integrated assessment, a harmonized assessment that allows to compare and trade off all these sustainability dimensions. And it is exactly that that we are working on, and together with the University of Hasselt and the University of Antwerp, we recently published our paper on the integrated techno-sustainability assessment, which is a methodology that allows you to have an integrated way of doing sustainability assessment. So we start, and that's really important, with an indicator selection. So together with the stakeholders, we define first the indicators that are most important looking at a specific technology. So not only climate change, but also different economic indicators, resource scarcity, water use, etc. Then we translate the technology into a mass and energy balance together with the tech developers, and we make sure that we use the same mass and energy balance, the same system boundaries for the different sustainability assessments. So we look at the environmental, the economic, and the social impact, and we translate them to a separate environmental, economic, and social score for each scenario that is defined. But we also, for each, take into account the uncertainty. Like I said, it's no problem that there is data uncertainty, especially at low TRL level. Having a dynamic calculation of the mass and energy balance is important, so that you also see, like, okay, what if a certain parameter changes? What would the effect of this be? And that's then visualized in the uncertainty and sensitivity analysis, where we also go back to the tech developers and say, okay, from an economic perspective, for example, you need to have this efficiency. What do you think? Is this reachable or not? And that's the discussions that we will have here. So also these interactions are really crucial. And then one thing which we added in addition is that we also give the possibility, because we don't always do that, but we give the possibility to translate the different results, so the economic, the environmental, and the social results, into one score. The reason why we do that is that if all these different sustainability indicators, they are expressed in different units, so it's really hard to trade off and compare. And depending on the stakeholder and the specific point of view that he or she has, it might be too complex and they just need one number. And what you typically do here is to select the extremes. So the scenarios which score always the best and the ones which scores worse, so that you have a clear vision. And if you have two scenarios which sometimes score better on the one and worse on the other, you can always go back and see, like, what is the reason for that, and then define your roadmap based on that. It's always also an iterative process. So while going through the TRL levels, we update these assessments, and like that, you always get an updated score. I don't have time to go into the details here, but there is a nice publication which you can have a look at for sure. And then if there are questions about that, just contact us. We're always available for that. So like I said, I wanted to keep my message really short. And as a take-home message, I would really like to thank everyone, because I think we collaborate already with many of you, and we really enjoy that. We really want to stress the importance of involving sustainability assessments from early TRL levels, and as such, having these multidisciplinary collaborations make clear trajectories for all the innovations towards the most sustainable ones. So that's really nice. We really would like to thank everyone for that. And I also would like to thank all our partners, especially Hasselt University, Antwerp University, for the collaborations that we have, because we can only develop these harmonized and generally accepted frameworks by closely working together. So that's something that I really would like to stress. So if you have other questions, just contact me or Metin or one of the authors on our publications, and then we are open for further discussions. Thank you.